Welcome back. You're watching Ozarks Tonight. Good to have you here. I'm David Oliver. We are joined this evening by Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, who has now marked his first 100 days in office. Senator, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Great
to meet you for the first time.
Likewise.
You're here on Wednesday. Tomorrow, the Mueller report's going to be coming out, and that's a big deal, obviously. We've been hearing about that for a long time. It's going to be a redacted copy. Republicans and the president have said that this is an exoneration of the president. Democrats don't trust that the attorney general is going to give them an accurate description of what's in the report. What do you expect to see from that report tomorrow?
Well, I think the attorney general has given us a pretty fair summary, and I assume that we'll see what he said we would see, which is that there's no obstruction, there's no collusion. There's no evidence that amounts to any kind of a crime. And I have to say, I mean, after 2+ years of this from the liberal news media and the Democrat Party, for there to be no evidence of any wrongdoing at all, I think is quite a vindication of the president. It's really a damning indictment, I think, of what turns out to be a bunch of nonsense, a bunch of lies. And I think we need to have an investigation now to figure out, how did we get to this point? I mean, how is it we've spent 2 years and millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, on this investigation? At the end of the day, there's nothing there, but the behavior of the FBI, the behavior of some elements of the Department of Justice, I think is very questionable.
As we talk about your first 100 days in office, I know one of the things you have been pushing for on Capitol Hill has been with regard to tech security and privacy,
right.
and you've made some inroads there trying to get Americans maybe some more protection. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so important. You know, these big tech companies know more about our kids than parents know about what their kids are doing online or seeing online. And my concerns are several-fold. The first is that these tech companies are tracking our kids, they're collecting information on our kids, then they're selling it in a lot of instances. We as parents need, and I've got 2 little boys at home, so this is personal to me. We as parents need to have the right to say, I don't want you tracking my kids, I don't want you targeting ads at them, and I want you to give back, delete all of the personal data you've collected on my children. I've introduced legislation that would do exactly that. The bigger issue is we have to hold these tech companies accountable. They've gotten sweetheart deals from the government. They've gotten huge. They're powerful. They're rich. They're invading our privacy. They're biased against conservatives. And they are sending, I mean, they're changing the American economy, and they're doing it in a way that hurts workers here in Missouri, in the Midwest, and feathers their own nest. We've got to stop that. Another
big issue since you've been in office has certainly been border security, the wall the president wants to build. I know that you and Senator Blunt had some differing opinions on the president issuing that declaration of an emergency to secure the money for the wall funding down there. What are your thoughts on that, where we stand on that issue?
Well, we have a terrible crisis at the border, and this is an instance in which it's much worse than I thought before I was sent to Washington. I have heard, excuse me, now, I have heard testimony from the head of the Border Patrol, from agents who have been down there on the border, saying over and over that cartels, Mexican cartels, control 100% of the southern border. They are making money hand over fist. They are smuggling drugs. They are smuggling people. Those drugs are making their way right here to southwest Missouri. We've got a major methamphetamine problem in the state of Missouri. We've got a meth problem here in southwest Missouri. Where's it coming from? It's not coming from in the state. It's coming from the southern border, across the border. We've got a human smuggling, human trafficking problem, excuse me. Where's it coming from? It's coming from across the border. So we have got to secure our border. And the president's right to take a stand on this.
And you mentioned their immigration issues and such, and we're going to come up and we're going to talk more about that shortly. I do want to ask you, though, as we look at legislative priorities, prescription drug costs. We just did some reporting here at Color 10 in February where we took an in-depth look at the issue of prescription drug costs. There are very few products in America that have risen at the level of inflation that prescription drug costs have. What do you think is the answer? Is it a state problem? Is it a federal problem? What are we going to do?
Well, it's a big pharma problem in a lot of ways. I mean, big pharma has jacked up the price of these drugs. They charge Missouri consumers 300% and 400% more for the same drugs that they charge people in Europe or Canada. That shouldn't be the case. That should not, that's price gouging. That should not happen. So I've introduced legislation that would stop that price gouging. It says, look, what you're going to charge consumers in Europe, you got to charge consumers here in Missouri. You know, take an example. Versailles, Missouri. A common prescription blood thinner in Versailles costs 500% more than it does in Versailles, France. That should not happen, and we need to enact laws to stop it.
Is that part of what we're going to do with maybe Obamacare in terms of trying to come up with a replacement for Obamacare? Or where do we stand on that issue legislatively on the Hill?
Well, I would say that when it comes to prescription drug costs, we need to act right this second to get prescription drug costs down, and that's why I've introduced legislation to do it. We need to act. There's no reason to delay. I hope that we can repeal and replace Obamacare. I think we need to do it to get insurance costs down, to put families back in charge of their own health care plans so they can choose the doctors they want, so that they can get the insurance coverage they want. But regardless of what happens with Obamacare, let's act now to get prescription drug prices down, and let's hold Big Pharma accountable to do it. Okay.
We're going to have much more. You're going to stick around and have one more segment with us, so we want to thank Senator Josh Hawley for being here for Ozarks tonight.